Hi, welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard with David Krayden. I'm your host, David Krayden, and we've got a lot of stuff to go through today. We're going to be talking about Trudeau's internet censorship legislation and his most recent bill that just passed, and it's the Internet Extortion Bill. We're going to be back with all kinds of information on what's happening with that. Just stand by. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. We are covering this story throughout the summer because I can tell you it is going to be devastating and catastrophic for free speech in this country. We said that when this bill was introduced. We're saying it now. We're going to be saying it when Parliament comes back in the fall. This bill needs to be revoked, and the whole censorship legislation needs to be stopped before it's too late. And this is why I'm asking you to support independent journalism. Please subscribe, ring the bell. I hate to ask, but it really does help a small outlet like this. It really does. So please make that effort to do that. Support this station, because I want to keep bringing you the news, and I want to keep going after the liberal censorship in this country. Because if we lose our freedom of speech, if we lose an free and independent media, because it's completely bought off by the Liberal government, if they destroy the media's ability to get their stories on social media so they can get higher circulation, higher readership, higher volume, better ad revenue, we are destroying the media. And we're going to have nothing left but a government-controlled media. So we are facing unprecedented attacks on freedom of speech and freedom of the press/media, what the press means today. And believe me, the Liberal government would like you just to ignore this throughout the summer. They want this legislation to pass, but they had no idea it was going to backfire. And Bill C-18 is backfiring. Why is it backfiring? Because a lot of the Liberals' allies in the mainstream media are turning against them. And they're getting criticism from some very credible sources. And I include Michael Geist, Professor Michael Geist of the University of Ottawa. He has been an outspoken critic of all of Trudeau's censorship bills. And there's one more coming. I'm not going to talk much about that today because we've got so much to deal with C-18 and how it's unraveling. But Michael Geist has said this is creating chaos, because Michael Geist seems to understand how media works today, unlike the Heritage Minister, Pablo Rodriguez, whom we'll hear from in a few minutes. But he clearly is out of his depth, is sinking fast on this issue, and doesn't understand how media works. How does media work today? Is that you want to get your stories on social media, because that means your audience expands sometimes into the millions. And the more people who read your story, the more people go back to your media outlet. More people subscribe to your media outlet. You can sell more advertising and increase the price of your advertising if you're getting millions of viewers watching your news. That's how media works today. Pablo Rodriguez doesn't understand that clearly. So Michael Geist has been very outspoken on this. As, of all people, Andrew Coyne, distinguished columnist who's sometimes a friend of Trudeau, sometimes not. But he's clearly seen the light on this issue. That C-18 has got nothing to do with saving Canadian media. It's got everything to do with censoring the internet. And nobody's going to win from this. And he understands this, I think, as well as anybody now, because a lot of the legacy media supported this legislation and were silent, did not criticize it, thought it was going to be a safe bet, thought it was going to be something that they could live with. And clearly they can't. But let's listen to Pablo Rodriguez talk about this legislation, and you can see with your own eyes how out of depth he is on this.
What it's their decision to make that. I'm not going to comment on hypothesis and then start to speculate and then, because you know what? I'm never going to make any decision on threats. Never. I never did. I never will. Never.
It's not really what I'm asking. Perhaps Mr. Ripley can answer the question. The bill is silent. It does not name platforms. It doesn't have the words Alphabet or Meta, Google, Instagram are not in the bill. The bill refers to online intermediaries. So in the event that Facebook and Google cease to be meaningful online intermediaries in the Canadian space, would the bill then contemplate looking at Bing, TikTok, Amazon, I mean, whoever are the next major players in terms of Canadian advertising and news links?
I'll pass it to Owen after, but we said it clearly in the bill that they have to be in a dominant situation.
So we were just supposed to know somehow that the Liberals were targeting Meta and Google. That even though that's not spelled out in the bill, we're just supposed to understand that. And since it's not spelled out in the bill, it can mean anybody. And this idiot doesn't seem to recognize that. Nothing has been spelled out in this bill, except it's a war on all social media. Now, right now, he wants to target Meta, Facebook, Google. But what happens when they're not compliant? And they're not going to be compliant. This is not worth it for them to have this money extorted for the privilege of running Canadian news. So then they'll go after other social media because the bill doesn't spell anybody of it. Let's listen to Rodriguez some more.
Right? And there will be thresholds, there will be regulations, and in the regulations, actually in the thresholds we're looking at, there's only two. That's Facebook and Google. And the rest are way, way far away, right? Very, very, very far away. But I don't know.
What does way, way far away mean? I don't know if this man has a competence, a general competence in the English language. He might speak French or Spanish very well, but he's not speaking English very well. He is not making any sense. And that's clearly by design because they don't know what they're doing. They're just hoping this is going to work out for their benefit.
We're discussing about the threats and trying to be scared about, about the threats when, and also the government has options, Senator. There's other things we can do. And all options are on the table, believe me.
What would they be?
That's what she's asking. What are those options?
The options, all of the options in terms of advertising, there's different programs, there's all kinds of stuff that we decide not to do anymore. Maybe we decide to increase, but those are options will be explained if we get there. But we're not there.
So options would be things like putting government advertising back in local newspapers.
But we're playing Facebook's game at this moment. But it's up to them. It's not to me to explain what it's their decision to make that. I'm not going to.
And clearly, Rodriguez is out of his element. He really doesn't know what he's talking about here. And so I think it's also important that we listen to what is actually happening real time right now. And I want you to watch this clip because it's extremely interesting.
So this morning we were talking to them.
But am I to infer from those discussions that they're going very poorly, given what Google announced? You said you met with them this morning, and what hours later they came out and said we're blocking all Canadian news as soon as this comes into effect.
Well, my team met with them, discussed with them this morning, not me. It was last week. Yeah, that's why I said I don't understand exactly why they put that press release. It doesn't come into effect now. It comes into effect in 6 months. Is this a strategy to negotiate? I don't know. You should ask them. But
is this about optics for your government at all? Is this about the optics of wanting to take on these big tech companies? So it positions your government in a certain way, in a certain favorable light, at the expense of good policy?
No.
No. That means translation. Yes, we. And that is exactly. And if you look at this journalist's face, she's not convinced at all.
What is good deals for our news companies, for a free, independent, non-partisan press in Canada? Why? Because it's part of a democracy. You guys are a pillar of our democracy. The role that you play is fundamental. The tough questions that you ask are absolutely fundamental.
He knows damn well that Justin Trudeau doesn't get any tough questions. It hasn't been getting a lot of tough questions from the legacy media, but he's getting them now.
But you guys are disappearing slowly, money going to the tech giants, and they have to be able to share that. They have to be able to compensate fairly, not more, not less, but fairly, newsroom that produce content that has value.
If though, and you make a good point, I'm not free of investiture in any of this, but if in fact the model, the model upon which I do the work I'm doing is broken, and it is not, and these companies are not able to make money doing it, why is it the government's role to fix that? Isn't it the company's responsibility to do so?
Well, and they're doing that too. They're looking for new models. They're looking for new ways to move forward, and some along the way had to close their doors. Others are surviving well, and others may close their doors sooner than later, which is a problem because those companies are disappearing. And is that good for democracy? No, it's bad for our democracy.
Do you get the sense that C-18 is destroying the news industry instead of helping protect it?
And here's the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, looking as annoyed as ever that somebody would have the temerity, the gall to ask her a tough question. Destroying the Canadian media? Well, of course not. We're listen to this answer. It's really quite pathetic.
So sure, happy to answer a question in English. Look, I worked for many years as a journalist, and I saw the real erosion of newsrooms created by the loss of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
How does joining that broader fight against companies like Google and Meta, including today's announcement on ending advertisement on Facebook and Instagram, benefit Canadians?
So here's Trudeau is going to explain that the government of Canada will no longer advertise on Meta and Google. Big deal. All right, he really thinks the government advertising's going to sustain these companies, but Trudeau's referred to this, the reaction, the non-compliance from Facebook and Google as being bullying. Who's the bully? The government, the state is the bully here, and Trudeau clearly doesn't get it.
We know that the global tech giants have completely disrupted so much of what we're doing. They've created tremendous positive goods in the world, but one of the ways that they have caused real challenges is on media and journalism. People's access to local news needs to continue, particularly in a time where democracy is so challenged around the world. Unfortunately, tech giants like Meta, even as they're making record profits, billions upon billions of dollars of profits, are refusing to make sure that media and local news get properly paid. And they're so insistent that they don't want to pay their fair share that they've decided to stop. They've decided to block access to media and journalism. And
there's that phrase, fair share. What does that mean? What is their fair share? That's a concept rooted in socialism, actually Marxism, to say they have to pay their fair share. He doesn't even know what that fair share is. He has no idea. He won't put a dollar figure on it. It's unlimited. It's unlimited compensation. And this is absolute insanity.
Local news for people across this country. That's just bullying. And it's undermining our democracy at a time where we need to stand up for democracy. We need to stand up for people's rights and abilities to access news.
So when's the last time Justin Trudeau stood up for anyone's democratic freedom in this country? And I tell you, I can't think of it. So was this designed to fail? Or was this somehow just a catastrophic government blunder? Just government incompetence as per normal? This is the question we really, really have to answer. And I think it's fascinating that just as Trudeau announced this, and just as this government decided to release this, we've got massive layoffs going on in Canadian media. I mean, there's been a lot of prominent journalists who just recently lost their jobs because new legacy media has been unable to operate successfully in the new media world. And they're going to be less able to compete in the new media world with Bill C-18 being enforced. The money is going to dry up. And this is why they are laying people off. And it's, you know, and clearly, then the old media is beginning to understand this, that this is, you know, as Andrew Coyne has said, he recognizes the media is losing its independence because not only is the old media subsidized right now by the Trudeau government, and we're not talking about the 1.4 billion the government spends on the state broadcaster CBC. We're talking about the subsidies, tens of millions of dollars that have gone to legacy media in subsidies. So now they're talking about more subsidies. So that means more strings. That means the media will be less inclined to criticize the government or the hand that feeds them, as Senator Pamela Wallin has pointed out quite brilliantly. That of course they're going to be less inclined to criticize. And so this is why. Is it incompetence, or is it something else? And I think that's the question. That's the question we have to ask ourselves right now, because it might well be something else, something quite terrifying, which is the collapse of what we used to understand as press freedom, because clearly Trudeau is going after something here. Do you remember that there was a policy resolution, and it's quite fascinating. There was a policy resolution at the last Liberal convention this year. I want to bring that up for you here. In fact, we'll even give you a clearer view of it. There was a policy resolution brought up this year, and it is quite fascinating because it demanded that internet media outlets reveal their sources. They have to prove their story. Now, some people said, well, that's just too draconian to have in a free and democratic society. The Liberals can't really be serious about that. They don't really want to get into the newsroom, but they do. You see, these are the poison pills that were inserted into this C-18 legislation. The government is giving itself the right to insert itself into the newsroom and to discover who the sources were, what they're saying, because they want to know. And here is a fascinating testimony from the
fishing for confidential information from news organizations, particularly information related to editorial departments, would be an overreach that's best avoided. But the threat to the independence of media rather than the loss of a few $1 million, I think that's a much more long-term threat to our industry if we don't get the language of this bill right.
It worth the risk.
Now, before we move on to Senator Pamela Wallin coming on next, but there's the publisher of the Globe and Mail, which is initially well behind this. They wanted an amendment so the government could not insert itself into the newsroom and have sources named, just like this Liberal policy resolution demanded. I had confirmation this morning from Michael Geist, who's been following this bill very carefully. That request was made, the government denied it. So the newsrooms are open to the federal government's monitoring. So let's hear what Senator Pamela Wallin has to say about this.
Risk of having the government now interfere or snoop in your newsrooms in order for the exchange of cash, which you're already getting through the deals you've signed?
I think at a time when there is questions of trust in media, we want to make sure that trust in media is something that people believe in, and I don't think that's helped if you allow, to Paul's words, the CRTC to snoop into what's going on in the newsrooms and have some say in what would otherwise be a commercial agreement that is struck between the parties, and value will be found in those agreements.
We've already had suggestions from ministers that they do actually consider that one of their rights, that they would make judgments about content.
25 seconds.
I'm assuming that concerns you.
It does.
Thank you.
So it does concern the Globe and Mail. And I'll tell you why. The Globe and Mail broke the story about Chinese election interference and how they were buying Liberal seats. How the Chinese Communist government was buying seats for the Liberals and intimidating some candidates, helping other candidates, interfering in the Canadian election. Now, the Globe and Mail received that information from a whistleblower within the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS. Trudeau said he wanted that guy, or that man or that woman. And I don't know who it is, and I don't know the gender or the sex of the individual. I have no idea. But Trudeau wants that person to be drawn and quartered, hauled up on the carpet, and disciplined in some way, probably fired, because he doesn't think there should be such a thing as a whistleblower. And he wants the Globe and Mail to be forced to reveal that source. And that's what this is all about. It's about going after the whistleblower. And this is the nefarious and the insidious design of Bill C-18. It is going to take that kind of freedom away. And this, if you want to see a chilling clip.
Monsieur Trudeau, vous vous faites rassurant par rapport aux résultats des élections.
You're very reassuring on the results of elections, Mr. Trudeau. But what are you saying? What do you?
Now, of course, this is Trudeau initially saying he's going to find out who that whistleblower is who told the Globe and Mail about Chinese election interference.
You have to say about the fact that people at CSIS are leaking secret documents. Isn't there some discomfort within those agencies regarding China? It's certainly a sign that security within CSIS needs to be reviewed, and I'm expecting CSIS to take the issue very seriously.
Do you believe that the whistleblower should be found and prosecuted?
I do. Absolutely, I do. The law has been broken. Sources, techniques have been put at risk. Our credibility with Five Eyes allies has been put at risk. There are better ways of doing this. There are better ways of raising your concerns within a national security agency. There are better ways of trying to bring some light to this topic than risking Canada's national security.
You believe it should happen? Do you believe it will happen?
That the person will be found? I do.
Absolutely chilling. Do you believe that person we found? I do. Is this what C-18 is all about? So the government can go into the newsroom and find out who the sources were so they can prosecute people for telling the truth about Liberal Party corruption, Liberal government idiocy, Liberal government authoritarian overreach. Is that what C-18 is all about? That's a very candid interview with this senior policy advisor to Justin Trudeau. Yeah, we're going to get this person. Trudeau promised to get the person, and now Jody Thomas is promising to get that person. And this is absolutely frightening. This is absolutely frightening. Because this is what C-18 is all about. I call it the Internet Extortion Bill, but it's more than that. And we're finding out the devil really is in the details, because we didn't adequately look at this bill. We just knew it was wrong. We knew it was aimed at internet censorship, like C-11 was, which demands absurd levels of Canadian content, and like the coming online safety bill, which is going to ban disinformation, which the government refuses to define. We knew this was part of a censorship package, a three-pronged package. but we didn't look at the details. And this is what the government hopes you're not going to notice during the summer as this bill comes forth into fruition. They don't want you to question this bill because it is frightening. And what it's aimed at is negation of freedom of the press and our freedom of speech in this country. And it's aimed at putting the government in the newsroom. Trudeau's already bought off the media. But thank God some of them are rising up and saying, we can't work in this environment anymore where the government controls us through the purse strings. We cannot work as free agents in a democratic society, trying to be a free press in a democratic society when the government controls us financially. And they're saying enough. Stop subsidizing. Stop paying us off. And the government knows, I think, the policymakers, at least, maybe Rodriguez is too vacuous to understand how media works today. And I don't think Trudeau understands it any better. But I'm sure the policy advisors who are putting this legislation together know that this is designed to hurt media. So it gives the government more control, a greater leeway to take more control over legacy media. Now, the new media never accepted the subsidization for the federal government because they saw it for what it is, a buy-off, allowing Trudeau to put the media in his pocket. They understood that. But they also understand how new media works, how the internet actually operates. And that's, you want your news to be on social media because it means more money. It means greater circulation. That's how circulation works these days. Some of these people are stuck in the 1970s and 80s, where it had to do with broadsheets and tabloids being sold on the corner in the morning, or television shows with huge ratings. These are all being completely negated now by social media. Shows on YouTube have a higher viewership than traditional media is getting. And they're being rewarded for that. And that's how it works today. But Trudeau either ignores that or doesn't like that, and he wants to control the media. This is flagrant disregard of a free press, flagrant disregard of democratic tradition in this country, and it's dangerous. And yes, we need the resolve to resist because we might be cut off from social media news any day soon, any day now. And that's the direct cause of the government's meddling, of the federal government meddling. And that's going to be sad news. Can you imagine being left with nothing but CBC, your publicly funded state broadcaster? So I encourage you to support independent journalism. Support what we're doing on this station. Please do. And we're going to keep this up. We dedicated this entire show to C-18 because the government doesn't want you to know more about it. And there's a lot happening right now. We're going to keep talking about it throughout the summer and keep watching to see what this Liberal government is up to next, because it wants to take your freedom away. And there's no question about that. So until the next time, I want to say God bless you and thanks for watching. We'll be here for you.